Hi guys, welcome back. I'm back. Had my few weeks holiday. Spent some time with my daughter. Went down to Phillip Island and in Victoria, Australia, which is a beautiful part of the world with beautiful scenery, lots of nature, some great eating spots, lots of things to do, especially some beautiful walks on the beach. So I'm back refreshed, ready to go and ready to get stuck back into this sampler stitch book. So again, welcome to everybody who's been with us before and has maybe done the previous tutorials for this sampler stitch book. If you're new here and you haven't been here before, welcome as well, or everyone's welcome. And we have already done tutorials. So there's already tutorials up on all of the patches that are on here and the fishes and picture here. That's all already on this YouTube channel. We've just spent over the past few weeks, few months really it's been, doing fly and feather stitch. We've played with different ways of doing our satin stitch. We've also got our Turkish rug stitch and our French knots for those that wish to tour the world with embroidery. And then we've got burden stitch, something a little bit unusual that isn't always seen, and our laid stitch. And then we've used those in conjunction with a few other stitches that we've done in previous pages to create this fish scene. So now it's a case of putting it together and putting it on our pieces of felt. So this is what we're looking at finishing today, our completed works. So I'll just talk to you again. For those of you who've done pages 1 and 2, you already know this, but for those of you that are new, I've used felt to sew our patches onto. Now this is felt that I have hand dyed. I've got merino wool roving, hand dyed it and then felted it myself. So it is actually a little bit thicker maybe than what you would buy in the stores. This one here I've dyed with weld and copper, and this one here with coreopsis, which is a lovely yellow flower that is about to start blooming up and down the mountain over the next week or two. I've seen a few little flowers sticking their little heads up at the side of the road, so I'll need to get out there soon and start picking. So yes, this felt is a little bit thicker than what you might buy in the store, but what you can buy in the store is absolutely fine. Acrylic, I mean this is all wool, but you can use acrylic, you can use whatever you can find. If it's a little bit thin and a little bit flimsy to sew on, just add a little bit of, interface on the back, just to give it a little bit of sturdiness, some iron-on interface. And though, if you're going to use iron-on interface on acrylic felt, make sure you put a piece of cloth on top and make sure you iron it very carefully, because acrylic felt will melt under the iron. If you're using wool felt, you don't need to worry about that. Alright, so the sizes are the same as the first two pages. We're looking at roughly, so that one's about 21 centimetres and 17 centimetres. So that's the size of our two pages that we're using. I have thought about putting some felt for those of you that would like to use a handmade felt but don't want to do it on the website, but on our shop, on our Etsy shop, but I'm not quite sure whether people are going to want to pay the money for it, because it does take a lot of time between the dyeing, between the wet felting. It is quite time consuming, and you know, you can buy felt for $3 at the $2 shop down the road. So if you are interested in spending more money to get something a little bit higher quality, contact me through the Etsy store and I can certainly arrange that for you. But like I said, if not, just use whatever you can get your hands on, because it's important that you give it a go and you use whatever you can use to make sure you give it a go. Alright, the threads, again, we'll be using the same threads that we've used throughout these projects. These are the merino wool threads again that I hand dye. But again, you use whatever threads you've used during the process. If you've used a different type of wool embroidery thread, then use those. If you've used a Pearl 5, then use those. If you're a little bit confused about what I'm saying about all these different types of threads, I actually did a video a few weeks ago, or about a month ago now, talking about different types of threads and what they can be used for and how you can use them. So again, use what you can, what you've got. If you want to follow exactly what I've done, I'm using the same threads that we use for the swatches that can be found on the Dye to Craft Etsy shop. And I will let you know which colour I use when. But just remember, this is your project. This is your bit of fun, your bit of experimenting, a time for you to explore, experiment. You don't have to copy everything I do. You don't have to use what I've used. It's about playing and encouraging each other to play and try something, maybe a stitch you haven't tried before, or embroidery which you haven't tried before, or anything. So don't let anything stop you from just having a play, picking up whatever you've got and having a bit of a play. So I think that's about all I need to discuss right now. And I've given you the dimensions. We've talked about the threads. Where you're going to be using stitches, we used in pages 1 and 2, just the same techniques and ways that we put together pages 1 and 2. So if you want to just go ahead and do your own thing and put them in whatever order you want to put them in, go ahead. Don't sit through this video for half an hour. You go and have a play. If you like what you're seeing here, the way I've done it, and that's the way you want to do it, then I'm about to start now with the instructions. Okay, so we've got I've started the first two pieces. We're working on our longer patches, our fly stitch and our feather stitch. Now, just like for the previous pages, we need to make sure we leave a space on the sides. So I've put your ruler down and leave a rule. Make sure you always leave a ruler width size, and that's where we're going to be doing our binding to bind the book together. And then I've just placed these. Again, you need to leave space around the outside where we're going to bind, blanket stitch the two pages together, the front and the back. And then I've just placed these two where I felt they look good. Okay, opposite each other and spaced out, so we can put the other smaller patches around it. And then we've got a stem stitch on the line around it, and then I've just done a little bit of fraying just to finish it off. So again, you can use whatever colours you like, as we discussed earlier, any colours you like, but I here have used a madder red for this one. And then now I'm using a coreopsis, an orange coreopsis. So we're just doing a simple split stitch. If you can't remember your split stitch, if it's been a while, go back and have a look at the previous tutorials. But fairly easy. Just splitting up through the middle, and down, and then you come back up at the end of the previous stitch, which should be around the middle. So you've got a double thickness basically. So for example, when I come back up, I'll be coming back up right there where that previous stitch ended and splitting the stitch on top in half. Well, close to half. Okay, so I'll do that all the way round. Come back and show you a little bit of fraying around the outside, and we'll move on to the next pieces. Okay, so I've split stitch all around our line there, and now, just as in previous ones, just going to fray the edge a little bit. Just get a pin and pull the threads up. Give yourself a bit of a frayed edge. You can do it, you don't have to do this if you want, you can just leave it as it is. You fray as much as you want or not at all. I just like it as a little bit of a different textural effect on the page. As I said in the previous pages, that this is going to be a stitch book which you can open for references for your stitches, but it's not something you're going to be using. It's not like it's a cushion that you're lying on or anything like that. So once you've frayed the edge a little bit, it shouldn't really fray too much more after that. You just need to be careful. I still have the backing on the linen, the stabilizer that I iron onto the back. So sometimes that doesn't fray as well, and you might need to just cut that down a bit, but it seems to have worked all right there. So just a little bit of a different effect. Alright, the next three pieces I am going to work on are our egg shapes, our different forms of satin stitch. Now these have got a little bit of tension on. Satin stitch always seems to have a little bit of tension, so because they're such small pieces of fabric, they might be a little bit creased in places, but oops, I'll put this one for next. But I can, once we sew them down, they'll be fine. So decide where you want to place them. I thought, like, just as an element of design, whenever you're designing something, we've got 7 pieces left, patches left, 3 eggs and then 2 and 2 that we did. So I'm putting the 3 up here and the 4 down here, always putting a little bit more down on the bottom, the heavier part of the page at the bottom, which seems to be just, you know, a little bit more natural and organic when you do something like that. If you haven't got an even area, an even amount of things to put on, sort of making the top lighter and the bottom a bit heavier. It's sort of what we're used to seeing. You know, if you think of a tree, the trunks are always a bit thicker at the bottom. And thinner at the top. It's just a natural way that we see most of the world. But that's just me. Like, you know, again, your piece. If you want to put these in a different way, a different formation, go ahead. It's about you expressing yourself. There's no right or wrong. Alright, so I'm going to use madder, Weldon copper and the eucalyptus leaves to sew these on. Again, keeping with all the colours that we've previously used over the past month or two. And I'm going to use a combination of a straight stitch and a blanket stitch. So again, stitches that we've done plenty of times in the past, but I'll get them started and you can have a look. So which way am I going to go? I might go yellow with that one, green and red. I think I prefer the red up there, green there, yellow there. We might do that way, mix it up a bit. Again, your choice. You do the way that you think looks better. I'm just playing off the cuff, basically. So, find my scissors. Sorry, talking with a needle in my mouth. And I think I'll start with just some straight stitches, holding this one down. Now there's not heaps of space, so we'll most probably, I'll start at the bottom here because we've got the pin at the top. Don't want to make them too big. If you wanted to, you could put them close together and it look a little bit more like a satin stitch, holding it down. If you put them next together, whoops. So, but I'm just going to put them slightly apart. How apart you want to put them is entirely up to you. The fun of embroidery, expressing yourself. With difference. Okay, so for the corner, I'm just going to do a little diagonal straight stitch. Hold that down. A bit of fluff doesn't want to go. Okay, so I'll keep going round and finishing that off. And I'll come back. And I'm ready to do the blanket stitch. Okay. Whoops. Just dropped something then. Alright, I'll be back when I'm ready to do the blanket stitch. Okay, so I finished the straight stitch there. Now I've had a little change. I'm not going to just do straight stitch and blanket stitch. I'm going to mix it up a little bit with this one. I didn't want to do two of one and one of the other. I sort of wanted to do something different for all of them. So I'm going to mix it up a little bit here, and I'm going to do some crosses. So there's two ways we could do this. So we do a little diagonal. Now what you could do if you wanted is just do your diagonals one way all the way round and then go back and do your diagonals the other way all the way round. Or you could just do your crosses, complete your crosses as you go around, which is what I think I'll do. So just some small crosses, small X's, nothing too big, but just, you know, I like to change things up a bit. Again, you could put them right next to each other all the way round if you wanted to form a continuous border. I think I'm going to just have have them with a little space in between, the same way I did with the straight stitch. I didn't do enough of a slant on that one. Look, never going to be perfect, but anyway. And I'm sort of using, because we've used a linen cotton to sew on, the weft and weaves of your fabric that make up the fabric are quite easy to see. So I'm sort of trying to follow, you know, the same line in the fabric all the way around to get a similar height. And again, I might have made that a little too small. A bit hard when I'm sort of working on an angle for the camera. Alright, now for the corner, I think I'll just do the same as what we did with the straight stitch, because we want to make sure we keep that corner down. So we don't want to leave it with nothing. I suppose I could do, because I've not gone right on the corner, a very small, no I won't. I might just move that for a minute because it's sort of in the way. What am I looking at about there? And they're just small. And how big you make the crosses, how wide you make the crosses, really up to you. Oops. Alright, so just some little crosses, and then I'll just do diagonals in the corner. So I'll complete that all the way around and then come back for the blanket stitch for the last one. Okay, so I finished my crosses on that egg shape. So for this last one, I've got my World and Copper threads. And I'm going to work on some buttonhole stitch, I think. So again, if you can't remember your buttonhole stitch, there's a tutorial video there for you can go and have a look. Just as a quick refresher, start at the top, go down. Sure you're inside the loop and pull through. Then again, as with the others, you could do them all close together, so then it would actually be a buttonhole stitch rather than blanket. But I'm going to do them just slightly apart. I'd love to see a version of all these stitches done close together. If anyone out there has done the straight stitches together and the crosses together and the buttonhole stitches together. I'd love to see it. See a photo. I think the main reason I'm not doing it is more of a time thing. It takes a lot more time and patience to do that. I haven't left a lot of room there for that. It's going to be a bit of a squished corner, but we'll get a corner in anyway. Alright, so again you go back in this hole, come up at the corner and turn it around again and go back in that hole again. This time go straight up inside your loop. You can just pull it and play with it so your tension doesn't drag it too much. And start. Now, I haven't got a lot of space here. You can see it's a little bit thin, so I'm going to just slowly come up a little bit each one, just to make that stitch a little bit smaller, to come up round. If you do it gradually, hopefully it's not quite as noticeable, especially in the grand scheme of things. Alright, so that's the blanket stitch. So I'll continue that all the way around. We'll come back for our last four. Okay, so I have finished my blanket stitch around my last egg shape, so my satin stitches are on, and I've pinned these last four to sort of roughly where I want to put them. So just play around with them, play around with the space you've got left, and place them in a way that you feel comfortable and like them. And then you need to sort of take notice of, remember what you've put where and what's overlaying what. So the thing, we need to look at what's on the bottom, and that'll be the first thing you do, and then each one goes up. Does that make sense what I'm saying? So I'm not sure it does. Basically, this one is covered by both of these, so this will have to go first. This one then goes over the top, but is covered by here, so we'll do this one second. And then this one covers that again, but is covered here, so we'll do that third. And this one is over the top of both, so we'll do that fourth. I hope that makes sense to you, because we can't obviously keep them all pinned if we're going to be sewing underneath bits. So that's our fourth one. We'll put that there. That's our third one, and that's our second one. And again, play with the colours of your threads, what you want to use where, have a little think about it. I'm going to go with my Eco Leaves for this one, and I am going to do straight stitch. I think. I am. I don't think. I know, because I'm about to put thread to fabric. So oops, I've gone into the knot at the back. Just make sure as you're going around these, sort of lift these tufts up and get your straight stitches underneath. So again, I'm going to do it just like I did with that one. All the way around, doing your corners in the same way. With a little diagonal in the corner. So I'll do that all the way around, and then we will come back and make some decisions about what to do next. As you can see, I'm just making it up as I go along, which is just fine. Okay, so I finished my straight stitch all the way around, and I've placed the next two down. These are the two pieces that will go over the top. So I think for this piece here, I'm going to do some crosses, and I'm going to do that in my orange, my Coreopsis. So I'll do that all the way around. I'm going to use crosses here because I can put that around and about the French knots that are a little bit close to the side, so I should be able to fit them in around. So I'll do the crosses for that one, and then I'm going to use my red. Sorry, I've got my needle in my mouth again. Get some. This is the Madder, and I will, what am I going to do for that one? See again, now I've got three left. Already one, I've got 4 pieces and only 3 stitches I'm using for these, so leaves me in a dilemma. I shall do the buttonhole stitch here, I think. And I've done that on the wrong side. Geez, sorry, I'm getting into a bit of a mess here. Right. I'm going to okay, so I hope you can see what I'm doing. So we've got the orange crosses that are going to go around our French knots. I don't think you need to see me do too much more stitching. You should know these by now. And then I'm going to do my buttonhole in the red all the way around there. Then I'll put my final piece on top. Again, leaving enough space for us to join these pages together at the bottom for a buttonhole stitch. So that'll go on top, and I will stitch around that in the green, in the Weldon copper. So I'll get all that done and come back and you can have a look what it looks like at the end. From there you'll be able to make a decision whether to do the same or to do it your own way, which is fair enough. And then we can just talk about page 4. Hey guys, welcome back. Well, it's only been a second for you. A little bit longer for me. So I finished the crosses around here and the blanket stitch around our bird and stitch egg. And then I did put this one down and did another blanket stitch in the Weldon and copper, the greeny colour. So that's the page for our sampler pieces, which I'm happy enough with. Another page down for the book. So this is the second page. Yeah, this is the second page. This is going to be 1, 2, 3rd. That's going to be the front page. And then this is going to be the reverse of it. So just remember that when you're leaving your edge across the top. You want your edge to be at the top because you want your bottom to be on the outside. And you're leaving your ruler mark at least so that you know we can do our binding of the book. And you want to make sure this edge, this where we're going to bind the book, is on the same side on both sides. Now just a little tip, when you're cutting down your underwater scene, start big. So I basically started cutting a rectangle around it that was a good about 3 centimetres away from the embroidery. And then I just gradually bored it in bit by bit until I got it the way I wanted it, the size I wanted, so that it would fit on the page comfortably and still left a bit of room for me to sew it on. So they're the main things you need to think about. Just gradually cut this down so that it fits, but you want to have a bit of room for your blanket stitch or whatever stitch you decide to cover it with. And you need to again have some room around the outsides here and your ruler width here. You just think when we put these together later on, we're going to blanket stitch these two together all the way down. Alright, so there are 2 pages. I'm going to blanket stitch these, and I'm going to do it just in the white. I don't want to put any main colour around the outside because I don't want it to feel blocked. I mean, there's 2 ways to look at it. If you put like a dark colour around the outside, it would give it a nice frame. But I sort of want to give it a bit of space, so I'm just going to do it in the white that we use for the bubbles, the natural colour wool. So you make the choice you want to make. If you want to really frame it, you could leave a little bit more space around the outside, and you could maybe, let me grab you an example, do what we did here with the house, where we did a split stitch and then the blanket stitch around the outside. And if you really want to give it a nice frame, that's one way you could do it. But I'm just going to go with a plain white blanket stitch around the outside, and then we'll be finished. Pages 3 and 4. So we've now got 1 and 2, and that'll go together like that. Then we'll have 3 and 4. And that will go together like that. Alright, so I shall be back with the start of our next pages. Now, those of you that have been watching for a while will know that I have not exactly been very successful at getting a YouTube video out every week. We had the big move, so that was a few months or a few weeks where I wasn't able to do anything. Then I've just come back from holidays. Again, I've not been able to do anything. I was sick through winter, and I had weeks where I wasn't always able to do something. So I've decided, rather than trying to get a video out every week, I'm going to bring that down to every fortnight. That'll also hopefully give me a bit more time to get some new products. I've got a whole lot of range of new products that I'm working on for the business, and I just haven't been able to find the time to get them on. Like, I think if you watched a few videos ago, I had the wattle tree, the Turkish rag wattles on the tree embroidery that I all set up to do kits for the shop, and haven't been able to find the time to do that. So things like that I need to spend a little bit more time on, but I definitely still want to prioritize you guys. I still want to produce stuff that you want to sew and that you want to make. So I want to make sure I've got the time to do that, because coming out with like a design like this and then actually doing all the sewing takes a bit of time and a bit of work. And rather than trying to push a YouTube video out every week and doing little fast, quick embroideries that I'm rushing through and I'm not spending the time on. I just don't want to do that. It just goes against my ethos. I'd rather produce something that I'm happy with, that you're happy with, that you want to sew, that you're interested in learning, rather than trying to push out something every week and produce something that maybe isn't quite as good or as fun to do, which is the main thing. All right, so I'll see you in a fortnight with the start of pages 5 and 6. Thanks for joining us. Bye.